Okay, so just very, very short recap of what the last two sources were that we looked at. One source was the one about Rabbi Chana, the fish, right, the boat, and that the main point of that was that he points out at the end of days, the Jewish people will get back their land and the rule over small people. The small people will rebel, turn the plate over in its mouth. Is a lashon meaning that they will make the situation miserable for the Jewish people, which I assume is the Israeli people at this point in time, and that's exactly what happened with the Intifada. And so he called that an Achris Yamim type of an event. At least Rabbi Yaakov, who explains that medrash, and it was a prophecy. It was a projection, Ruach HaKodesh, into the future, and we're living to see it happen. So the fact that the Palestinians uprose in 1987 and again in 2000. 2001, 2000, that is a simon. It's a simon. It's a simon that we are in Achris Yamim at the end of days.
What's the date for, you placed the date at Kibbutz Goliath. What's the date of
1986. According to Rabbi Yitzchak, 1986, according to Rabbi Yehuda, 1990.
So this falls right...
We'll get to that later also. We'll come back to later on as well.
But this falls right in that time.
Absolutely, perfectly. That's why it converges. We'll see that all these things converge at the one time. That's all part of piecing together the big picture. The fact that you have so many sources.
At either date, the Russian Aliyah fits in both.
Yeah. You have Operation Moses was earlier. You have Operation, what's it called? Solomon. Operation Solomon. Yeah, it was I think the early 90s actually. Yeah. Or was it the other way around? One of them. But they. I mean, you don't have to be exactly in the money. It's like right. The fact that all these decades pass, and all of a sudden this is happening. And even if you have technical problems with Russians, whether they're Jewish or not Jewish, or Ethiopians, the fact is that Kodesh Baruch Hu does a lot of things to raise consciousness. And the fact that these people are talking Aliyah coming to Israel, and it's got this Kibbutz Galios feel to it. It's to me'arer in everybody the sense of Kibbutz Galios, to put it into our minds. At one point, we weren't thinking, but Nefesh shows up all of a sudden. These Jews are coming on plane loads. The plane loads of Jews are coming. It's a Kibbutz Galios type of an event, and it's happening at that exact time. So you can't ignore the. We don't believe in coincidence. Everything's hashgacha pratis. So you have to always ask the question: what's the hashgacha pratis? What's the message behind this?
If everything happened at the same time,
exactly,
then it would certainly be an ace.
Exactly.
You wouldn't
it's happening enough at the same time that it is an ace.
Right.
But it's not as obvious an ace as because then it'd be too.
It's still an ace.
Absolutely, but it'd be too obvious because the same way, for example, if you came to Israel and all of a sudden you became wealthy, clearly the hand of God's over here. People would come for the wrong reasons. There has to be enough of a trace that you can see the hand of Hashem and see the miracle, and therefore derive the message from it if you're open to derive the message, but enough that if a person wants to deny it, they can still deny it. So that's where you get the separation.
The purpose that we have the opportunity to
absolutely,
easily.
Absolutely. That's all through history. But here we're talking about things that are converging for the sake of telling us they're approaching the end of days. So the second medrash was the one about from the result, right? Become. Right, the 5 psukim that the Gemara says they're ambiguous. I don't go through the whole thing right now because I write the material, but the upshot of that arizal of that from Shar Gilgulim was to tell us that the final generation is going to be the neshamas of the Dor HaMidbar, and Moshe Rabbeinu will come back in the body of Mashiach, and the Erev will come back as well. In other words, that the issues at the beginning of Jewish history, we left Mitzrayim, are going to come back all over again at the end of history. Right, that's what that Arizal is telling us. So there's an overlap. So why do we need that? What's the point of that? So the point is to tell us that the same way that the Jewish people back at the time of leaving Mitzrayim, what was the main issue that really kicked off the exile for thousands of years was the rejection of Eretz Israel, in principle and in practice. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings everyone back at the end of history, right, like bookends, to tell us that this is what the main issue is going to be later on as well. How you feel about Eretz Israel. At the same time, the country's developing and has become prepared for people to live here, and the exile is coming to an end over there, and the economy, it's all, the point being made from different directions. I mean, it happens to be that if you look at it, that we didn't discuss this at this point, and I don't really, see it anywhere, but the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that Techias HaMesim is going to last 210 years. after 40 years of Kibbutz Galius, he can't miss the connection to leaving Mitzrayim, because we happen to be Mitzrayim, even though we're supposed to have been there for 400 years. And Rashi points out that we didn't have to be in Mitzrayim Dafka for 400 years. He can trace it back to the birth of Yitzchak and all that, so that you Mekayim the Pasuk of 400 years, because God said 400 years. Right? He made that point, 400 years. So it has to be way to that even if we left early, that we're still Mekayim the 400 years strangers in a land not your own. So Rashi finds a way. But the Torah can still be accurate in what it's saying. But the reality is, it seemed like we're supposed to be there for 400 years. We were only there for 210, and we ended up spending, even though we're only supposed to spend really 1 year in the Midbar, we ended up spending an extra 39 years, 40 years altogether. So 210 Mitzrayim, 40 years. All of a sudden, at the end of history, you got 40 years of Kibbutz Galius and 210 of Tichis Amesim. I mean, it's like bookends. 210, 40, 40. Right? There must be some kind of connection, even though Rav Yitzchak says 214, but you get the 210, I mean, it's like close enough, but the 210 is like, that's already, the fact that you have that. So it sets up, yeah.
So the pasuk so what you're saying, the door of Dea, what happened to the door, the door of Dea, the door that left Mitzrayim, right, is going to be a reflection of what's going to happen in the generations of Achras Yomim?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Generation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's the pasuk for that now?
Well, we're going to see a few more psukim right now. But so far, it was just the verse of the Arizal, the come, right? That you will lie down with your fathers, and you're going to die and lie down with your fathers, the come, right? And the pasuk seems to say, and you will get up again. So Rashi, we saw the Gemara in Yuma. It says, Rashi explains that vakam it's a reference to Techis Amesi. This verse, the word vakam, can be talking about. What's the Gemara? What's the problem the Gemara has with this pasuk, this verse? Is because vakam works in both directions. It can work what came before it. It can work what comes after it in the end. So vakam can either, a Pshat level, it really only works one way, and that is this people will get up. Because the Pshat level, Moshe died. He died. He's not going to get up again. Not right now. Why? That this pasuk is talking about the Chesed Mesim all of a sudden, right? But we have Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Sod. We have 4 different levels to learn Torah, and since the word vakam is singular, we can learn it on Moshe Rabbeinu, in which case, as Rashi points out, this is a remez, just like the Gemara brings lots of remazing down later on in Sanhedrin, right? That this is a remez that the Moshe will come back into Chesed Mesim, and it's not going to people per se, or it doesn't have to go into people per se, right? But Pshat as it is going to people, comes back the Arizal and says, no, even what Rashi's saying, we can go even further than that. That's a Drush level. That's a Gemara type level. Let's go on a Sod level. On a Sod level, it's talking even earlier than Techis Mason, because Techis Mason after Mashiach comes. Let's use this pasuk to talk about as Mashiach actually comes, the final generation. Let's use the word vakam to say the Moshe will come back not as Techis Mason, because that's going to happen anyhow, right? But he's going to come back as Mashiach. He's going to come back in the body of Mashiach ben David, because he has to come from Yehuda, but the neshama can come from anywhere in the end. So it comes from Levi, it comes from Moshe Rabbeinu. And likewise, the come is also going in the people. They will come back as well and be the Jewish people. And likewise, it's going in the Erev Rav, and they'll come back as well. So a whole replay. Why? To tell us that the issue that they left unfinished back at their time has to be completed later on in history, at the end of history. And what was that? That was the Meraglim, the rejection of Eretz Yisrael. So that's that remes, right? But it gets better.
How is the Meraglim the completion of it?
It was a problem. They were the problem. Yeah. Because that was the only chet that was on we didn't really do tshuva for the midbar. People died in the midbar because they were part of the chet, but because of that episode of the Meraglim, we never recovered. We never recovered in the end.
Those people didn't even get into Olam Haba, did they?
According to the Gemara, according to Kabbalah, they eventually get there anyhow. But they have to go through a whole Gehenna process. A little bit complicated, but they were literally, not the women, of course, not the Levium, not Moshe. And Yeshua, but the men between 20 and 60 who were part of this chet, they're the ones who had to die in the midbar, before they came to Israel. So we never really recovered from that. That was the main. That was what the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos calls the 10th Nisayan that broke the camel's back. That was the one where Kosh Baruch Hu said, "Forget it. It's not going to work. Not with you guys. Right? I tried. I brought you as far as I could." There is more to the story than that. It's not so simple. I mean, but it's a sheer into itself. But that's the basic idea. I don't want to spend too much time on that because we did that last week. But that's the basic idea. Now,
We didn't do the Moroccan last week.
we spoke about this. Sure, we spoke about this. The whole last week's shir was one quote from the Arizal.
Oh, the comp.
Yeah, the comp. Yeah.
But you were bringing in the Moroccan to it. We didn't talk about the Moroccan in that passage.
I must have mentioned it.
No, I don't remember.
I don't remember it.
Yeah, okay. Okay, but that's the point. Fixing up the head of the Meraglim. That's the only reason why they would come back. Because you're coming back every time you come back in a Gilgul it's to rectify what you failed to rectify in previous lifetimes. You don't come to re-rectify that which is already fixed up, right? So we have to find something the Dor Midbar didn't rectify that they should come back and fix later on. It's not the Egel Zahav because the Kosh Baruch Hu killed the perpetrators and Moshe got kapara. He came down on came in the next day in Yom Kippur. He received kapara, got the luchos shniyim, right, and we got kapara. What was the one chet that the Mishnah says that we never really rectified, fixed up? That's the Meraglim. So it's like framing the end of days issue over here. You got two major sources. One that tells you that the action, the Achus Hayimim action, is going to be in Eretz Yisrael, right? That's the one about Rabbi Chana. And now you got one telling you that the Jewish people, what's going to be, the issue for the Jewish people is also going to be Eretz Yisrael. Yeah.
I know I've spoken about this before. Maybe we're Dor Midbar.
Exactly. That's the point. No, we are. I'm saying we are.
We are Dor Midbar.
And so I'm saying that before a person rejects Eretz Yisrael as people do, you have to ask yourself the question: am I legitimately rejecting it, or am I failing the second time at a test I failed the first time?
But if we're here already, then we pass a test.
You, me, all of us here, right? But the people back there who don't even yearn to come, it's an issue.
But if you make a heshbon of the number of men between the ages of 20 and 60, back then and now, it's pretty close. Really, really close right now.
In terms of what? There's 12 million Jews in the world today.
In terms of overall numbers.
The truth is, whatever the cheshbon it is, Kosh Baruch Hu works it out. Souls to split up. That's not the. And that's interesting. It's an interesting point, but it's not an equal. The main point over here is that this is the issue. It's not a coincidence that the the Jewish people have struggled with many issues over the last 60, 70 years. We had to fight poverty. We had to fight anti-Semitism. We had to fight living in new countries. Schools, orthodoxy. In terms of having kashrus and things like that. We've had a lot on our plate over the last 60, 70 years. Mostly was rebuilding the Jewish people after the Holocaust, right? And I remember coming to Eretz Yisrael in the 80s, and certainly around coming back in the 90s, second time that that Eretz Yisrael was not the main issue. Well, the truth is, once the Intifada began, I guess it was a different story. But up until the Intifada, the Intifada changed. It was a game changer. It was a game changer.
You know what the game
It forced everybody to have to deal with the issue. Jews who couldn't care less up until the Intifada could say, "It's not my thing. It's not my cup of tea. I'm not interested in being their teacher's zone." That's what people told me. Great, you're going to Israel to live. Fantastic. Teachers, I'm not interested. It's not my interest. It's not where my family's going. Yeah.
According to Rav Schwartz.
Yeah.
Rav Schwartz. The game changer was really two things. The fact that I'm going kind of like chronologically backwards. The fact that today now in Israel there's more Jews than in any other diaspora community, which has probably been that way for the last 10 years or so. That Merkaz Torah has shifted from
That's a different type of game changer.
From America to Israel.
No, that's a different type of game changer. I'm talking about consciousness game changing. I'm talking about where Jews at one point in time didn't feel the need to even think about Eretz Yisrael. You came on family trips and like that.
No, because in the 80s and 90s, the last door of the Gedolim in America, they passed away. Rav Kamenetsky, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, Rav Hutner, Rav Gifter. The list goes on and on.
Do you think that anybody learning in Lakewood cares about that? Do you think anyone learning in any of the fine
No, but we realize that. In other words, the Merkaz Torah shifted from America.
It has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with you. It has to do with them. You've already crossed the line. You've crossed the threshold. I'm talking about the people who, at one point in time, you didn't all of a sudden become conscious of Eretz Yisrael as of 1987, 1990. It was on the Cheshbon, and therefore eventually moved here. There are people for whom this was never an issue. How many people spoke? The best I can remember is planting trees. growing up, Chay to the whole thing, the JNF basically put money in the Karen Kayemet, and you planted a tree. Did you ever want to live there? When I came here, after my bar mitzvah in my 14th year was 1970, was after the 73 war, basically. It was a depressing time to be here. It was terrible. It was amongst all these, these adults and things like that, and it was like a bar mitzvah, present. I hated the place. I hated the food, hated the people, hated the place. I thought to myself, I'll never live here at some point in time. I spoke to the people. It wasn't even part of their cheshbon. People took trips elsewhere. They didn't go to Israel. Some people had loyalties. Some people had a cheshik. But people were deciding yes, no. I mean, there was a certain connection to the land. Also, have to understand as well that the generation today that's anti-Israel, that's pro-Palestinian, were still babies. They were still children. They hadn't grown up yet. They hadn't had opinions yet. So what the Palestinian issue did for the Jewish people, and I don't want to spend too much time on this point, was that it forced people to have to.
Don't worry about it.
Not have to edit the thing out after because people won't sit for a whole hour,
That's it.
But the people were forced to have to make a decision: are you pro or against the state? It took away the middle ground. It took away the suffix. People who weren't even thinking about it, who never thought they'd have to think about it. Do they have any loyalty to the country? It forced the issue. That's what the Kodesh Baruch has been doing for the last 20 years, forcing the issue. That's what he does. He gives you time to think about it. He gives you time to float around a bit, basically. When it comes time to a case, he starts saying, okay, me, l'shem elai. Right? Who's on my side over here? What about you? What about you? So what does he do? He creates crises, nisyonos, to force you to have to decide where you stand. And that's what's been going on. And all these people are saying, I'm pro-Palestinian, I'm against the state, the Israelis are this, the Israelis that, They understand. They've chosen a path based upon a decision that throws them to the category of Erev Rav. It's like the Russia at the Seder table who says, what does this thing mean to you? And we say to him, you exclude yourself, you put yourself on the other side of the line. Had you been in Mitzrayim, you wouldn't even have gone out in the end. Same thing over here. You're excluding yourself from the state and putting yourself on the side of the enemy over here, right? The gula's going to come. You're not going to be part of it. Yeah, what's bothering you?
What's bothering me? What's bothering Rashi? What's bothering me is we see the same thing in pre-war Europe. That the
100%.
Wait, excuse me.
Yeah.
That the big gedolim, they one after the other.
This wasn't supposed to be the point of debate.
Okay, one after the other, they passed away.
Okay.
And if you want anything, I mean that's really clear when you have Gedolei Torah in Chutz Lords, when that generation is basically finished, then it's I don't think you're going to see.
They don't think it's finished. Look at this asifah that just took place recently in New York, filled with Gedolei, filled with Rabbanim. They're, as far as they're concerned, they have their Gedolei, they're content. Fine, everybody will agree.
That was silly.
Everybody will agree that there's no one like Rav Moshe or Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky or all these Gedolim lived that time. But the sun sets and the sun rises, or the sun rises, sun sets. One replaces the other. People are content. You know why they're content? Because it's not talui. It's not dependent upon Gedolim. It's not dependent upon even so much the quality of Torah. It's dependent upon the quality of the quality of life.
What do you mean?
People are comfortable. People are comfortable.
It's easy there. They have no. You've said it.
Yeah, it's comfortable.
I brought that up. I remember you saying it. People in, I'm going to call it the East Coast, are so comfortable. It's like it's Berlin. Who needs Yerushalayim? They have the 5 towns.
Yeah.
They have everything they want. They don't need to be.
So, but people don't realize that's the top of the next book. I don't even have a title for the book yet, but this is where this comes from. Where this because we have to stand back and analyze. At the end of the day, when we're finished saying, well, we can't make a mistake about this because the Gedolim say like that. But the bottom line is 6 million Jews perished in the Holocaust. Did we have a chance to get out?
Yeah.
We didn't. Are you going to tell me that God trapped us there? What kind of God do you believe in? God, he said, no, I won't even give you a chance to go, even if you want to go in the end. But history does not support that. You go back in the 20s, the 30s, the Chafetz Chaim sensed it already. The Chafetz Chaim in the early 30s was talking about how basically millions are going to die.
Isn't there a Gemara that says that God always opens a door before he closes it?
No, the Gemara says that there's always a refuah for the Makkah before the Makkah. 100%. Yeah, no, it's all part of our shkafa. There had to have been that we could have left. We could have mitigated the situation. That's what the Gemara says. Okay, the fact that we never do it raises the issue. What's going wrong all the time? But there has to always be the possibility to get. Is there a possibility to get out right now from America?
Yes.
Does it exist?
Yes.
Can it be done?
Yes.
100%.
Is it easy?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. A little bit, but it's harder. It was easier, let's say, a decade ago when housing prices were higher, and you could sell your house and make more money, and the pricing over here.
It's easier
Rob,
today.
it's not supposed to be easy.
Why do you say that?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, it could be easy.
It's not supposed to be easy, Rob.
Yeah.
That's the point, okay?
100%.
That's
But Baruch Hashem, it's been way easier. Way easier. Because Baruch has
Because
rolled out.
he's got Rachmanis on.
Where
He
in the
sees that
world?
we're-
Where in the world does anybody offer you $5,000 and a free plane trip to Israel to start you off, to get you back into the homeland? Where in the world is a place developed? People can't see the view from here.
Shkanta, car, rent,
You can't, if we
Rent
stand
something,
back,
they give you cash with
if we
mortgage.
stand back, there's no question the banks are a pain in the neck. There's no question that there's all kinds of problems. There's no question. It's all 100%. But it's not supposed to be perfect yet. There's got to be some kind of Nesarian. You want to take away every Nesarian? Take away all the Mesiras Nefesh required to be here? Not yet. We still have to make free will choices, even after we get here.
We don't,
Anyhow,
have no decision.
the point is that we have to appreciate what happened back in Mitzrayim. 4 fish lost their lives in Makas Choshech because they chose to stay and they rejected the Geula. They rejected it. They chose to stay back in Mitzrayim. The 1/5 that went out, we lost the men along the way because they also rejected. They didn't reject leaving, but they rejected Eretz Yisrael. It's all part of the same thing in the end. So therefore, it's not a thing from the past. We never finished the Geula. Everybody has to look at themselves as if they too left Mitzrayim because we've been leaving Mitzrayim now for 3,000 some odd years. Because Baruch Hu said, if I leave you guys here any longer and don't interfere in the process, you will totally assimilate. There'll be nothing to talk about in another 10 years from now. So therefore, I will cut the 190 years short. But you know what it's like? It's like someone who goes, takes a mashkanta, a mortgage from the bank, a 20-year mortgage, right? And he takes figures he can pay it off. The economy somehow will be okay, and he'll get a job, and he'll pay it off. What happens basically after 10 years of paying the mortgage, things get rough, and he can't pay the mortgage. So he walks into the bank and says, I can't pay the mortgage. What am I going to do right now? So here you lose, it used to be that you just kept going no matter what, but it's now more like European law. But you walk in and the bank says, well, I'll tell you what, the bank is not going to say, oh, you can't pay it? Okay, we forgive you. We forgive you. Go ahead, live in the house. We as long as you can pay it back, we take your money. But now you can't pay it back? Moichalach. Right? No. The bank says, let's restructure. What can you do? Right? Here they just keep adding interest. But North America, they might freeze it. They might make smaller payments. There's different ways of restructuring there.
In America, they're letting them go without making the payments.
Even better. Okay, but usually, but they take the house. They don't foreclose either. So who's
Why you
losing the
say
money?
that? It's in all the news stories.
You read everything that you see in the newspaper?
Anyhow,
Everything.
wait.
Do you
Let's
believe it
let's
all?
not go there. That's
A
a
lot of
technical
foreclosures.
reality.
Okay,
The
well,
real-
I'm telling you, what we see is that there are a lot of banks just letting you stay without making payments
You know why they're
because
doing it?
they don't
Norbert?
want the house vacant.
No, why do you know why they're doing it? Because essentially what they do is by keeping it on the books as
A loss.
They can write it off.
Exactly.
It's a loss.
That's the reason why they're not doing it.
Right. They have an alternative reason. Okay, but
the banks that can foreclose, believe me, they're going to foreclose on you because they're not going to
But
lose.
So-
they can, again.
so Moshe Rabbeinu comes back to Kosh Baruch and says these guys can't, or not, Kosh Baruch himself says they can't pay the mortgage anymore. So Kosh Baruch says we'll restructure. We'll take the 190 years and we'll divide it up amongst thousands of years. Right? There's a mashal like that that the Gra brings down as well, but we'll make it palatable that they can survive this thing, and that's why Ketz Yamim is called Ketz Yamim because the gematria of Ketz is 190. Hayamim means those days, not Ketz Yamim. Means Ketz Yamim would be the end of days. Ketz Hayamim means the end of those days. Which days are we talking about? The ones we left incomplete back in Mitzrayim. The 190 years. The Ketz is 190 Hayamim of those days, those years. So therefore, history has been about leaving Mitzrayim the entire time. The final Geula will be the redemption from Mitzrayim finally. Because Mitzrayim's a concept anyhow. It was once the country, but really it's a concept. Mitzrayim today would even count like Mitzrayim, like Egypt today could not be the Mitzrayim, the Chumash. It's not smart enough. It's not
Well,
spiritually.
It's not the same. It's not the same.
No, but even if it's the same culture, same people, the lifestyle, the way they think, the way they run their lives, it couldn't. I mean, it's not Meitzer Yam, right? The confinement of the Nun Shari Bina. Back then it was. Paro was a much more spiritual person, the wrong type of spirituality, but they knew what they were doing. They knew how to close down. Paro had a strategy to undo the Jewish people back then. Today it was just basically anti-Semitism, just kill the Jew, kill the Jew. They don't care about the Torah and what we think and how much we're connected to Kosh Baruch Hu. They just basically kill people in the end. So the Gemara confirms this point of view. This is crucial because people don't see themselves as Jews back in the Midbar 3,000 years ago.
How do you know that there's not a conscious effort to do the same thing that they did in Mitzrayim?
Because you don't even see them talking about that. There's nothing.
No, you don't see it. They didn't see it. The Jews didn't
They
see
don't
it
even
back
know.
then either.
But they don't even know enough about it.
But wait a second.
Yeah.
What did they do in Mitzrayim? What did they do in Mitzrayim? They put them into Shibud.
Who?
The Jews.
Yeah.
Slowly, they just got them into Shibud. They weren't aware of it. They could
Who?
gradually.
Paro?
Paro.
Absolutely was aware of it. 100% he was
No,
aware of it.
Paro was aware of it, but the Jews weren't aware of it.
Right.
They were.
But I'm saying the Egyptian leaders today.
Yeah.
It's not their agenda to stifle the Torah. It's not their agenda to stifle the Jewish people from connecting to God through the Torah. It's their agenda basically to just they just don't like the Jews. Period. It's just pure anti-Semitism.
Uh-huh.
It's just hatred for hatred's sake because we're different, because we have a land, because we're because like the Arabs for
But that
all
doesn't
these.
fit into your paradigm because essentially what happens is if the Jew is the essence of getting of kedusha, then his ulterior motive must principally be that by a mechanism which would separate him from the Torah, by making him unaware of it. For instance, the idea of credit, okay, putting a person into shibud. When a person is burdened with credit and can't get out from under the credit that he owns, he's essentially unaware of that the fact that he is becoming a slave. He is dafka becoming a slave. Okay, so the more you put that person into credit, what you're doing is you're separating him from his awareness of kedusha, because now he's under lachatz. What do they call it in the Torah?
Right, but that's not Mitzrayim. That's not Egypt.
What, you don't think now today what's happening
In Egypt?
No, in Egypt. That's what happened in Egypt.
To the Jews? How many
No.
Jews are there?
What?
How many Jews are there?
No, today you mean, or
Today.
I'm talking about the United
I'm
States.
talking-
Like,
The United States
that's what I'm talking
is a
about.
different story. I
That's
kept
what
saying Egypt.
Oh no! I'm relating it today apparently by
Right.
what's
No.
happening,
Today, Mitzrayim is America, 100%. In this generation, Mitzrayim is America. That's why, if you look at it, you've got an erosion of Torah values, right? The country was set up on
This whole internet thing. Just look at what they're talking about here now. The whole thing is in America now. This whole thing.
That's just an aspect of it. That's just there was a counter pro. I don't have time for this.
Yeah.
Get to the main point.
Yeah.
The main point is this next quote.
Go.
For 20 minutes I'm trying just to get to this quote over here. The Gemara says, okay, in Sanhedrin.
Don't worry, it's an ongoing shear. It's like Rabbi Eisen says. He has a shear that goes on. It's been going on now for 5 years. Okay. He never gets there. But don't worry, he'll finish this up.
Yeah, 100%. But it's just too good to pass up every time I get there.
Go.
The Gemara says the following thing.
Yeah.
It was taught in a brisa. Rabbi Simai said, it says, I will take you to me as a people, right? That's in Shmos. And it says, and I will bring you to the land, just as the coming to the land of Israel was with only 2 of the 60 myriads. A myriad is 10,000, right? So 60 times 10 is 600,000. Talking about between 20 and 60, because there were 3 million Jews that actually left, right? So too was the leaving of Egypt with only 2 of the 60 myriads. It's not so push exactly what this means, because as Maral points out, could be talking about the entire period of time, but the Pshat is that we did not leave with as many people as we ought to have. Rabbi said it will be like, okay, that's what the Gemara says. Up until now, that's fine. We have no problem with that.
Where's the pasuk?
It's the Gemara itself is in Sanhedrin on Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph in Chiluk, right?
Right.
So that's the Gemara is basically saying that, and Rashi explains what it means. Rav is what adds something very fascinating in all of this. Rav has said it will be likewise in Yemasa Mashiach, as it says, the pasuk says in Hosea, the pasuk says, she will dwell there as in the days of her youth and as in the days of her ascent from Mitzrayim. That's what the pasuk says. So Rashi explains, what does this mean? From all the 60 myriads, only 2 will survive. In Yemos HaMashiach. Now, I don't want to get into the numbers thing because that's gets a little bit scary and nerve-wracking. There's all kinds of smaller numbers and bigger numbers, basically. But the point itself is all I want to focus on. Rashi and the Gemara, and no one's arguing. Rava says this, but nobody argues in Rava B'chla whatsoever. Rava is saying that at the end of days, that when it comes time to leave the Mitzrayim of that time, very few are going to get out. It's talking about leaving Mitzrayim. It's making comparison, just like the result did, same type of situation, right? Making a comparison between the leaving Mitzrayim back at that time and the going into Eretz Yisrael. And Rava comes along and says, you know something? This is going to happen again. It happened, we left Mitzrayim, we left with a fraction of the Jewish people. It's going to happen again. We're going to leave with a fraction of the Jewish people from Mitzrayim. Whatever Mitzrayim is going to be. It didn't mean Egypt, the country, because they knew that we left Egypt behind and Egypt was destroyed.
It's going to be America today.
That's what it's, that's the Mitzrayim of today.
Europe 60 years ago.
Yeah. Back then we left we left with a fraction of the Jewish population from Europe to wherever we went after that. And now the last main exile because there are Jews all around the world, but basically it's America, Israel. Those are the two sides of the ocean for the most part. At one point, Israel was a small faction of the whole thing. Today, amazingly, Baruch Hashem, the population here has increased to such a degree that they're almost equal at this point in time. America is the largest population. America is the largest Nisoyan. What?
Israel has more Jews than the United States.
No, I looked it up. Apparently, well, at least not as much as 2010. It was still. Okay. So Baruch Hashem.
6 million Jews here, and there's about.
I don't think we're 6 million yet. Apparently, there's a lot of.
Almost, it's 5.7, 5.8, something like
right.
that. And the United States, the legitimate Jews by the statistics, according to Dan Altura, who looked at the demographics.
Less than that.
He says there's roughly about between 4.5.
Really, that's small.
5 million
that's
legitimate Jews in the United States.
Okay.
What about legitimate Jews in Israel?
Well, I don't know.
Here we have a controller situation. The rabbinate has a controller situation. We don't allow. Up until now, we haven't allowed reform conversions or conversions. Getting married, you have to bring the documentation. When people live here as Jews, for the most part, we know who they are. Now it's getting dicey because they're getting pressure from outside the country, also internally, from the reform and conservative movement that will undo it. But for the most part, we had much better control of the situation than we do over there. That's for sure. Way better until now. But the point is the following thing: that the comparison is very strong. That the end of history is just the completion of the beginning of history. That's the bottom line. And therefore, the issues at the end of history are the issues at the beginning. So the issues are the same issues that were at the beginning of history. That's the main point. Which means that Eretz Yisrael didn't just float to the surface of world politics and Jewish consciousness accidentally, like dropping oil into a container and just happens to float to the surface. It's floating to the surface because this is the time in history to rectify that which went wrong back at the beginning. The Gemara says 3 gifts were given to the Jewish people, 3 good gifts were given to the Jewish people, all by Yisurim. 1 is Torah, 1 is Eretz Yisrael, and 1 is Olam Haba. You can't reject either of them. We made a terrible, 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 tragic mistake 3,300 some odd years ago. We rejected the land. That's not a small thing. That's a huge thing. We take it for granted today because lightning doesn't come down from the sky. The same way, for example, we're making with all kinds of things today that once upon a time scared us completely because we never knew, for example, if we were going to be attacked with pogroms and all that. Because when you have the fear of bad things happening, then you have fear of chet too, because you never know if they're connected. But today, it's been so good for the Jewish people that we feel I rejected the land of Eretz Yisrael. I'm not interested in going there. It's not on my agenda. I don't love the place. I like it. One day we'll go there. One day I'll love it, right? But on some level of rejection, I don't feel bad about it. You know why? Because Baruch Hu has not lowered the boom. So therefore, the message I get is, it's okay. It's not okay. Not okay. People always mistake HaKadosh Baruch Hu's patience for a lack of hashgacha pratis. They think because he keeps his peace, in spite of the terrible things that we do, that he's like okay with the situation. And he's not. He's not. He never was and never will be with certain issues. And this is the main tikkun. Everything we say today is a justification, is an excuse not to acknowledge and recognize what's gone on here for 70 years, what Kodesh Baruch Hu has done. We'll see later on. This is not about since 1948. The Gra began this process back in the 1700s. It started to flourish through the 1800s. There's been Aliyah going on now for over 150 some odd years. The consciousness, the events taking place have all been working towards, you stand back and you say, what's been on the agenda over here? What's been on Hashem's mind this entire time? And you see the end of the exile, coming back to the homeland. And everything else was a stop along the way. You make a mistake about that, you never stay around long enough to find out that you did. Because Baruch Hu somehow, you can't fathom how it can happen. European Jewry also couldn't fathom. As bad as it was, they couldn't fathom it either. Right? Nor the pogroms and the Chaimitic pogroms, we also couldn't fathom. We couldn't fathom Mitzrayim too, for that matter. We can never fathom how Hashem will bring an end to an exile, but He does. He does, and when it happens, we find ourselves saying, gee, I wish I left earlier. Gee, I wish I woke up the situation. So if the issues are the same, this is exactly what it says, what Rashi says. Only 1 out of 5 left Mitzrayim, while 4/5 died during the 3 days of darkness because they were unworthy of being delivered. Why? Why did He bring darkness upon them? Because there were wicked people amongst them of that generation who had no desire to leave Egypt, and these died during the 3 days of darkness. Doesn't make a difference. Had they even set up Bati Midrashas to learn Torah there, it wouldn't have made a difference. Had they even produced Talmid Chachamim over the years there, it wouldn't have made a difference. When an exile comes to an end, it comes to an end. There's one final, definite location in the world the Jews have to end up, and that is Eretz Yisrael. There's no other way.
Okay, but we can't pick and choose and say, 40 years in the Midbar back then, and 210 years slavery, and now we've got 40 years kibbutz galuyot and 210 years Tekiyas HaMeson. If we've got 20% that got out of Mitzrayim then, we're talking about 20% now as well.
That's what he's saying. That's the scary thing.
Okay, so how? But like she said, we've got a whole lot more than 20% here now.
Well, you have to go to
what
this country. You have to go to this country and talk to people and see what they're actually holding with the land.
Okay.
There are a lot of people here. You see, it goes after the heart. There are people in Chutzlarts who dream and chalish to be here every single day. It's as if they're already here. They're there for halachic reasons, authentic halachic reasons. They have an excuse. They have an excuse to be there. If it wasn't for the excuse, they'd be here. People like that count as if they're B'nai Yisrael. And there are people over here who would leave if they could, find a job, find a way to get out of the country. They don't like it. They don't like it. They don't want it. They're prepared to give the land away even. Because Baruch Hu may say it's like you were never here in the first place.
So we're saying, because it's in contradiction to the Tuva Haaretz, what we're saying is that in the 20% that's going to make it, there are quite a few Jews here that won't.
First of all, negative prophecies don't have to come true, right? Exactly. We don't know. It could be exactly. It could be exactly as he's saying. It may be that only 1/5 survives it. It could be 7,000. Who knows? Like Tuvar says, maybe. Our job is not to work with that number.
But what about the skut that he talked about? That being here, hey, you're here,
Absolutely.
all your sins are.
Again, we're talking about numbers, but the fact is that if you're dealing with the 190, though, you're dealing with the years. Okay, we never know the numbers. In other words, calculating. Who knows? Maybe the Rahmanis of Kodesh Baruch Hu, maybe he'll let everybody in just because they'll have a change of heart. We never know what's going to happen.
We have no idea.
But one absolute we are dealing with here is 190, correct?
Right.
So 190, it's very interesting.
190 in terms of what, though?
190 years.
No, but it's spread over 3,000 years.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, it's spread over 3,000 years. That's the whole point.
Oh, it is?
That's the point. We restructured the mortgage.
How do we know that it's spread over the 3?
Because we left early. And that's what Ketzi Yamim means. Ketzi Yamim means the end of those 190 years.
Okay.
Whenever it comes about.
We have to make up those 190 years because
we've done it through the last 3,000 years.
We have.
When the Mashiach finally comes, it's because we finally finished off whatever we had to go through the 190. We will have finished off. And another point, by the way, the Rizal explains.
How do you know that we've done it?
Because Mashiach will come.
No, but how do you know that the 190 is included in the past?
Because Mashiach will come. Mashiach will come. The redemption from. You know what's supposed to happen in Mitzrayim?
Yeah.
the Rizal says what was supposed to happen in Mitzrayim is rather than go down to Mem Tesh Shari Tuma, we were supposed to elevate the Mitzrayim to Nun Shari Kedusha.
Right.
And then that would have ushered in the period of Techiyas HaMeisim. That would have rectified the whole world. So leaving Mitzrayim, there wasn't supposed to be. Why is Mitzrayim not included on all the exiles that are mentioned, Davram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov later on, in the Medrash in Breshit, right? Why not? Because Mitzrayim really incorporated all the other exiles. If we had got that right in Mitzrayim, there would have been no other exile. We would have gone the 11 days to Israel, the Plishtim would have disappeared, we would receive the Torah along the way, and everything would have been exactly what it's going to be in the future once Mashiach comes. So, leaving Mitzrayim completely is, by definition, the completion of all the tikkunim of the world that the world requires. Once Mashiach comes, there's no more tikkunim left to do. So, therefore, the assumption is, not the assumption, it's just clear that represents the end of whatever was left over from Mitzrayim when Mashiach finally comes. And that's why he's Moshe Rabbeinu.
No, but I hear what you're saying, but I'm still not hearing the 190. The 190 you're saying is immersed within the period of time that since we left Mitzrayim, those 190 years have been. That's a tikkun.
That's a tikkun.
And what you're suggesting now that those 190 years or a partial amount of those 190 years have already been consumed, correct?
We're so close to the end that most of the 100 years have been consumed.
Why can't you say that the 190 years? Why can't you say that the 190 years really only started since 1830 with the religious aliyah? You add
maybe
190
maybe
to 1830, the 2020.
Yeah, no.
When are you expecting Mashiach to arrive by?
I'm hoping earlier than that.
Huh?
I'm hoping much earlier than that.
I'm saying, but
All I know is I went to the Makolet and all the products on the shelf all said expiry date December 21st, 2012.
Okay. Yeah.
But that's an interesting proposition. It's interesting. It could maybe you're right. But then what about all the years until that point? And then what about the suffering until that point? That had to be some kind of tikkun.
No, but the whole process of that was the initiation.
Yeah, but you're talking about 1,000 years of tikkunim through all the pogroms and all the sufferings of the Romans and all that that came. After that you can't just exclude and say that was just in the air. This happened to happen. You have to assume that was all part of the tikkun process.
You're saying that the people that because the people suffered, that was part of
the Gra brings down the Gra brings down beferish that because of all the suffering, Mashiach ben Yosef probably won't even die. The extended exile plus the suffering the Jews undergo will be part of why Mashiach ben Yosef will not have to die at the end of days. That's what he says. But that's the point. So now says Rav Cheskel Lavenstein, right, who was the Mashiach of the before the war in Poland of the Mir Mashiach Ruchani, right? Powerful individual in Mir before the war and after the war in Eretz Yisrael in the Mir and also Panovich as well. And he says the following thing from a sefer from Or Yechezkel in a section called Imunus Geula. He says the exodus from Egypt liberated only one out of 5 Jews, and some say 1 out of every 50. That's what the Medrash brings different opinions. Because all those who were attached to Egypt and did not want to depart died in the 3 days of darkness and were not privileged to leave. That is, only those who desired redemption with all their hearts were redeemed. The final redemption likewise depends upon our yearning.
That's our attitude. That's our desire.
Yeah, but how many people today are Mekayim to peace to Yeshua? If you get up in the morning, I mean, you know what some people do in this world? Some people, what they do is they get up at Chatzot and they do Tikkun Chatzot and they mourn the loss of the Beis Hamikdash. They actually get up in the middle of the night, right, and they burn some ashes, they put on their forehead, and they do Tikkun Chatzos. Because for them, there's no. I mean, they have pleasure, they enjoy food, they live a life, but they never want to forget the fact that this is Galus, and that they have to mourn the loss of the Beis Hamikdash. They take it seriously. When you get up in the morning and you go to you go to Daven in Chutz La'aretz, and you even here also, by the way, but much less so. But in Chutz La'aretz, and you're content with that, and you're content with your chavrusa, and you're content with your job, you're content with your family life, in the diaspora, and it's not killing you, it's not painful for you that you are not yet part of the Gula. You're not asking the question, when will Mashiach finally come? When will the Gula finally come? Ki ratzu dechas of neha. He didn't say sometimes, but maybe in good times and not bad times. He says all the time a Jew has to want her stones and cherish her dust. He says, he's writing right here, he's talking to Panovich HaShavua, he says even more than this. He says, you know something? Our tefillas shav. We're talking about Mashiach coming and Geula in our tefillas, and who talks about these things? Like we're embarrassed to talk about these things. Like somehow it's like, going back to, Shabbatai Tzvi, so therefore don't talk about these things. The yearning that a person has to have for Geula on a daily basis, it has to be intense. It has to destroy some of the taste of the pleasure of the things that you're enjoying in the course of your day. This food shouldn't taste so good because of that's why by the Kosh Baruch Hu, Gemara brings down the Kosh Baruch Hu, she took away the time of pleasures in this world from the Jewish people. The Gentiles, they have all the time the taste of things. They can taste food the way it's supposed to taste. They can taste physical pleasures the way it's supposed to taste. The Jewish people, it's not as intense as it's supposed to be. So Kosh Baruch Hu wants us to understand what's missing from life. There was a time when they didn't have to even season the food. It had its own flavor, its own taste. So they didn't make up for it to season, put things in, because it doesn't have the taste it used to have. The Gemara in Baba Basra talks about how basically, back in the time of the Romans, the Jewish people contemplated national suicide. They were going to make a gezerah, no children. Better to die off than to go through a galus with Rome and all that they're doing to us, and taking away our Torah and assimilation, things like that. We should better just die off instead. And the only reason we didn't do it was because the Rabbanim knew that people would have children anyhow. They would go ahead and have children anyhow. So therefore they were not gozer. I mean, you have to understand what this Gemara means. Where's it coming from? But it's telling you what a Jewish life is supposed to be like in the diaspora. At the very least. The pain you're supposed to feel, the suffering, you have to yearn. And the lack of yearning for redemption is a rejection of redemption. It's a rejection of closer to Kadosh Baruch Hu. You can't say, well, you know why I don't think about this? It's because I'm learning. And I'm learning stark. I got a great chavrusa and a fantastic base medrash, and I got a good kollel salary, right? Covers the bills mostly, living in a decent house in Chutz La'aretz, and that's why I don't yearn for redemption, because as far as I'm concerned, I feel the Shekhinah shore on me. And that's exactly what the Meraglim said when they came back and spoke to Kodesh Baruch Hu. And you look at their reaction. Kodesh Baruch Hu says, for how long are they going to reject me and my land? And the Meraglim go, what? What do we say? We didn't say that. We said, Dafka the opposite. We love your Torah, we love your mitzvahs, we want to do the whole thing, but here in the midbar, can we feel your presence? Kodesh Baruch Hu says, you're never going to feel my presence the same as you do in Eretz Yisrael, the base of Mikdash, and the entire nation together coming there on the Rishlosh Regalim, and doing the mitzvahs the way it's supposed to be. The mitzvahs Tulib Aretz, that's the big picture. You're satisfied with less? Something wrong. And that's what he says. The whole redemption, right? The rachamim, it comes purely for the sake of the yearning that Klal Yisrael has. There's no other way around. There's no other excuse. You have to yearn every single day. And you're right. There's an inherent danger in doing that. There's an inherent danger in yearning for redemption. I experienced it firsthand. You experienced it firsthand. We all experienced it firsthand. You know why? Because here you are. That's the danger of yearning for redemption. That's the danger of yearning for Israel. You end up there somehow. Because people, when they yearn for something, they yearn for a new car, they find a way to pay for it. They yearn for a new house, they find a way to pay for it. They yearn for
What's the downside about being here?
Nothing.
Nothing.
It's a fictitious reality that people, unfortunately, are blinded by, because Amalek has us looking this way as opposed to that way. We don't understand, we make a mistake. And the mistake is, again, it's like the mashal that we've used it before in the past. You want to do shiputzim in your house, you hire a kablan. You hire a contractor. Shows up the first day in the 7 o'clock in the morning, you're excited. He's conscientious. He's come to work. You give him a cup of coffee, maybe a donut. His workers, they're all happy. They go and they work a whole day and do great stuff. Great stuff, right? Second day, this goes on for 2 weeks, and the job is progressing beautifully. Every morning, coffee and donuts, right? They're grateful, they're thankful. You're thankful, fantastic work. Comes the last day of the job, right? You sit down with the kablan, no surprises. It's exactly what he said he's going to charge you. You write the check. He says thank you. You say thank you, and you say goodbye. I'll recommend you to my friends in the future. The next morning you're sleeping because he's not coming. Every other morning you got to be up at 7 o'clock in the morning because he's showing up. So you got to be there early, put the coffee on, and get things ready. The next morning you sleep in, but you hear a familiar sound. A familiar sound. You open the window, the blinds. You look at that the driveway, and there's the Kablan. He's like in his little pickup truck, showing up in your driveway all over again. You say, that's funny, that's interesting. Wonder what, maybe he didn't pay enough, maybe the check bounced. No, it couldn't have bounced, but wonder what it is. You go downstairs and maybe he forgot a tool. It's a little early to pick up a tool, but he works early in the morning, so maybe he's stopping at work, whatever. You open the door. Say, good morning, how are you? What's the matter? What are you doing here? Great coffee and donuts. Great coffee and donuts here. Okay, sure, come on in. Why not? Let's discuss the job and go over the whole thing all over again and see what a great job he did. You're minding it's a little strange, but there's stranger things in life. So you sit down, have coffee and donuts. He doesn't stay too long, gets up and walks out, right? And this goes on the next morning, and the next morning, and the next morning. What happens after a week of this? What happens to the relationship, right, with this Kablan after a week? And he still insists on coming and persists. Eventually call the police. This guy is a nuisance. There's something wrong with him, right? The Jewish people go into exile to build redemption. We're sheputniks, right? We are kablanim. We go into redemption, into exile to build redemption. We go to this country because there we pick up this material and these supplies. And we go to this exile to pick up those supplies. And then we go to this exile to pick up those supplies. But like any place you go to build something, you buy something, when you're finished, you pay, you get out. The Jewish people keep moving in. We're like the Kabbalah that just keeps coming back. We built the redemption. Look, we did. Look at this country. It's a little dark right now, right? But look at this country. How much U.S. money, how much American money is in these hills? And over there, and Canadian money, and British money, and South Africa. How much money? Tons, right? The Jews have been exceedingly generous. They worked hard. They made livings. They made money, and they supported this country, and they built it. Okay, the Israelis put the hard work in. They're flying, fundraising, whatever. But there's a lot of foreign money in this country. Built it because that's what it was for. It was all about building the redemption. So Kosh Baruch Hu gives the means to do it. But there comes a time when the job is over. How much more are you going to build? How much more money do we need here? Kosh Baruch Hu, he goes ahead, and it's like he even separates the shekel from the U.S. dollar, right? And when the housing market collapses over there, here it goes up, and it's booming instead. 60 Minutes did a 20-minute session on this. How much the country over here is thriving in spite of the rest of the world. Look at going on. Greece is one of the 10 countries that voted against the state of Israel back in 1948. Just across the Gulf over here, just across the sea over here, they're collapsing. And they have resources, and they're attached to Europe, and they're part of a huge economy called the European Union, right? And tiny little Israel over here is getting cut off more and more and more from its outside sources, and somehow it's like the frog you keep hitting. It just gets better and better, more and more and more in the end. Absolute miracle, because the period of building has come to an end. It's time for the Kabbalah to leave. You're not going to leave. You're still coming back because the coffee and donuts are so good. Dangerous, very dangerous. And that's what it says. It says the Jewish people, right? It has to be that we have to want it. We have to yearn for it. It has to be everything we live for, because when it is, it's time to leave. And when it's time to leave, you actually go. Next week, B'ezras Hashem, we'll talk about the next step. Part of the problem in this whole process, part of the confusion in all of this has been, is that people are so busy looking at who built the country as opposed to the country that's been built, right, that they don't realize that there's a gula taking place under their nose, because they cannot fathom how Hashem would work through people like this to build a holy geula shlema. So next we will find that there's more sources that address that issue, very important sources that say on the contrary, this is exactly the way that Kosh Baruch Hu works when we're not zoichet in the gula to the front door.